Have you ever known a new Prime Minister get off to a worse start than Keir Starmer? It's truly shocking. I mean, the message of things can only get worse is hardly inspiring, is it?
But I have to be honest with you. Things are worse than we ever imagined.
He looks afraid. He looks like a deer in the headlights. You know, he looks like a shark that's just been confronted with an even bigger shark.
But they are. I really am every day believing that Keir Starmer is more of a psychopath, that none of them know what they're doing.
Has Keir Starmer finally cracked under the pressure of his own policies? Recent events suggest that the Labour leader might be reaching his breaking point. As the political tide turns, Starmer seems more shaken than ever, stumbling publicly in a way that has left many Conservatives saying, well, we saw that coming. From policy failures to dropping approval ratings, it seems the Labour leader is unraveling faster than his party can spin the narrative. So, what exactly has Starmer revealed, and why does it feel like he's in full-blown panic mode? Well, for starters, he revealed just how incompetent and clueless his government is to tackle the challenges Britain faces. Take a look.
But I have to be honest with you. Things are worse than we ever imagined. In the first few weeks, we discovered a £22 billion black hole in the public finances. And before anyone says, oh, this is just performative or playing politics, let's remember the OBR did not know about it.
Right, so nobody knew about £22 billion that were missing. Starmer recently made a public address where he appeared to crack under the mounting political pressure. It was less of a grand revelation and more of an anxious unraveling. He tried to explain the Labour Party's lack of direction, but his stumbling and mumbling only led to more confusion. And isn't that just the perfect metaphor for his entire leadership? What's worse is that he admits that they had no idea about any of it. Really? The opposition had no idea about public finances even though all of that information is available to them? Sounds like Labour is either making excuses or has no plan whatsoever.
That I won't tolerate a breakdown in law and order under any circumstances. And I will not listen to those who exploit grieving families and disrespect local communities. But these riots didn't happen in a vacuum. They exposed the state of our country, revealed a deeply unhealthy society, the cracks in our foundations laid bare.
Lots to unpack here. Firstly, the champion of working people had no idea of the growing discontent among the people. Really? That's just disgraceful. Starmer unknowingly revealed how out of touch with reality he is when it comes to the protests and riots. A leader who does not even understand or connect with his people is no leader at all. However, the speech just kept getting worse and worse. He went from revealing his flaws as a leader to exposing insane Labour policies. Like, for example, how they released prisoners early.
To be honest with you, I genuinely didn't know. Let me tell you this, every day of that disorder, literally every day, we had to check the precise number of prison places and where those places were to make sure that we could arrest, charge and prosecute people quickly. Not having enough prison places is about as fundamental a failure as you can get.
Genuinely didn't know. Just how the British public genuinely didn't know that Starmer and his Labour Party would bring Britain to its knees. This is our Prime Minister now, a guy who had no idea about anything at all, really. He's right about one thing, though. It is as fundamental a failure there can be for a government. Naturally, his mental breakdown and gloomy revelations didn't sit well with the British public, especially other politicians. Here's what Ben Habib had to say about Starmer's abysmal performance.
Starmer has taken the United Kingdom to its knees within 9 weeks of being in government. And everything he does attests to the fact that the Labour Party, and him particularly as Prime Minister, should be nowhere near their respective offices. They should be booted out of government.
They shouldn't even be let near a student council body, let alone the government of an entire nation. Starmer was supposed to be the knight in shining armour for Labour, swooping in to save the party from its previous failures. Instead, it feels like we're watching a tragic play where the hero gets lost in his own lines. One moment he's trying to be tough on crime, allegedly, and the next, he's sympathizing with policies that don't sit well with the public. Watching him struggle through these reveals was a bit like watching someone try to assemble furniture without instructions. Entertaining, but you know it's not going to end well. And you guessed it, it's not going well at all. In fact, Starmer's losing his grip on reality with these breakdowns and constant fear.
He's got a brittle premiership anyway, because only 20% of the country actually voted for him. And so he's governing like everyone agrees with him, which they don't. And I think this comes through in his demeanor. He looks afraid. He looks like a deer in the headlights. He looks like a shark that's just been confronted with an even bigger shark. And this is really hurting his favorability. Really. Now, they were never very good anyway, as you can see.
Starmer's recent breakdown wasn't just about words, it was about his entire demeanor. His attempts to project confidence fell flat, and at times he seemed genuinely frightened by the gravity of his own situation. Can you blame him? With the economy struggling, immigration rates soaring, and crime becoming more rampant, it's no wonder he's starting to crack. He's clearly afraid, and out of desperation, he's making things worse for himself.
Again, it's not like there are some things that are good and some things that are bad in this first couple of months of the Kier Starmer government. Universally, every single thing that they have done has categorically been decisively incompetent. You use the phrase virtue signaling. They're much more focused on appearing to be good than actually doing good. They make these problems demonstrably worse.
Not only are they incompetent, they're making things much worse. It's like he's playing a game of political Jenga, and the tower is starting to wobble. And what's Starmer's strategy? To pull out another block and hope for the best. Turns out this isn't going to stabilize things. The public sees right through his empty promises, and it's starting to show in Labour's approval ratings. One might wonder if Starmer's trying to break some kind of record for how quickly a leader can unravel in the public eye. These contradictions do not go unnoticed. People see the blatant hypocritical policies that Labour keeps passing and Starmer keeps revealing amid his mental breakdown. Don't believe me? Here's just a few examples by the U-turn king himself.
The Kier Starmer, who made a series of promises when he stood to be leader of the Labour Party, or pledges as he called them, and not only broke them, but in some cases claimed he'd never made them.
Is it a pledge that these industries will be in your manifesto for nationalisation?
Yes, it is. I didn't make a commitment to nationalisation. I never made a commitment to nationalisation.
Some of those lies were just petty.
I want to pay tribute to Jeremy Corbyn. He's a colleague, he's a friend.
Was he a friend?
No.
Lying to the public is always unacceptable, but what's worse is denying the lies as if nothing happened. He claims he never made those statements, but the records don't lie, Sir Kier. Arguably every pledge that Starmer made, publicly in speeches, was broken, and he keeps making excuses or blaming the previous government. Why? Because he has no plan on how to tackle these issues.
I'm so sorry if I sound like a broken record that this lot that have ended up in Downing Street are literally insane, but they are. I really am every day believing that Keir Starmer is more of a psychopath, that none of them know what they're doing, that David Lammy is as thick as two short planks, Angela Rayner, well, I wish she'd stick to clubbing, and they're trying to kill off pensioners and get us into a war. I mean, what the hell is going on? Who on earth voted for these morons?
No plan, just winging it. That's how Starmer operates. It is a bit psychotic that this government keeps pandering to us about doing the right thing, but can't ever seem to do the right thing themselves. Breakdown or psychotic behavior? Either way, something's not adding up and there are things severely wrong with the government. However, that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the countless contradictions Labour has made. Thankfully for us, Starmer keeps revealing all of this as his mental breakdown continues.
You can't, can you? He either U-turns on everything, or you could say he just lies to you. And there isn't a plan. On illegal immigration, they haven't got an answer.
Where would you house people who come on small boats if Labour win the next election?
So Labour's policy is to not use the hotels by clearing the backlog. This backlog
So
is
you would
costing...
use barges and military sites,
No,
which cost
absolutely,
more than
no. The Labour
hotels.
Party has said no, we would not use that. And for the same reason, the costs are ludicrous. The National Audit Office has said the costs are ludicrous.
But you're not... I'm asking you, where are you going to house people? Because you're not
Well,
going to be able to
depends.
clear the backlog in a day or 2 days or 3 days, are you?
Classic deflection that we see very often from Starmer and his gang. However, it didn't work this time. Remember when Starmer promised that he would put an end to illegal immigration by smashing the gangs and strengthening our borders? Remember how he continually bashed the previous governments for not doing anything about the thousands of undocumented immigrants that kept flooding our country? Well, they've done nothing about it themselves.
So yesterday was the worst day in the Channel since Sir Keir Starmer took over. 703 illegal migrants in 11 boats. Before the election, we were told about smashing the gangs and about a new border command, or whatever they're calling it. We are yet to hear anything about those things since, aren't we? There have been protests, riots. There are millions of people who are angry, and immigration is now the top issue facing the country for most people, according to the latest YouGov polling.
Starmer's breakdown is a textbook case of contradictions coming home to roost. Remember when he promised to take back control of immigration? That's rich, considering his party has been anything but decisive on this front. The reality is, Labour's open border sympathies and reluctance to address illegal crossings have left the country in disarray. Now, Starmer's stuck in the middle trying to appease his Liberal base, while facing the ire of the general public demanding stricter border policies. They themselves have exposed their own hypocrisy multiple times in Parliament. Here's just a few examples.
The Honourable Gentleman has been on the wrong side of this issue his entire career. He described all immigration law as racist. He said it was a mistake to control immigration. And he has never, ever voted for tougher asylum laws. It is clear, Mr. Speaker, while he's in hock to the open border activists, we're on the side of the British people.
Wrong side of history, wrong side of the issue. Starmer has time and time revealed himself to be having a mental breakdown over every possible issue, especially the immigration crisis. What's sad is that during the process, he has revealed something shocking. There are major divisions in the Labour Party itself. Some of them are rebelling against Starmer, and he is pissed. Things are escalating, and this government might be out very soon. Just see how the winter fuel payments have torn the party in half.
A huge week. So we're going to have the vote on that winter fuel payment cut tomorrow. And it sounds as though there are about 50 Labour MPs who aren't happy with Keir Starmer's policy. About 30 of them are actually considering voting against the government or abstaining.
That's a huge number of MPs that have turned their back on Starmer. It's no surprise he's feeling the heat. At this point, Starmer's like the driver of a bus with no brakes, hurtling toward a cliff while pretending he's got everything under control. And his party members? They're the passengers yelling out conflicting directions. One wants to swerve left, another screams to veer right, while a few are wondering why they even got on the bus in the first place. You almost feel sorry for the guy. Then you see his crime policy and realize that he deserves it.
And in contrast to the last Labour scheme, prisoners were let out with no supervision, no electronic tags. In fact, 80,000 offenders were let out. 16,000 were violent, Mr. Speaker, leading to multiple murders committed. We fixed that system. But when it comes to this question, not only are we building the biggest prison programme in history, we're also deploying rapid deployment cells. And, Mr. Speaker, because on this side of the House, we understand the importance of prison. Unlike one of his frontbenchers who said, and I said, who quote, "Prison doesn't prevent crime."
Another point of contention that seems to have pushed Starmer into his meltdown is the ongoing criticism of his crime policies. Tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime, he said. Yet here we are with rising crime rates and a justice system that seems to favour leniency over law and order. Starmer's grand reveal of his plans to tackle crime has been nothing short of an anticlimax. In fact, it's making the situation worse by releasing prisoners early.
But over half of the prison population in this country, many of whom will be released early, are therefore violent or sexual crimes. None of those people politically can be allowed out extra early, because what is going to happen, and it will happen, is that people will reoffend violently.
These criminals will reoffend, and they make the British communities more vulnerable. The Labour leader might be in favour of rehabilitation over punishment, but guess what? The British public isn't buying it. When he addressed these concerns, his words were filled with hesitation, almost as if he didn't believe in them himself. Now, if that's not a red flag, what is? It's as if he's trying to sell ice in the Arctic, stumbling over his own pitch while knowing the audience is just not interested. And why would they be interested anyway? Starmer is busy ruining them financially with hefty taxes. Of course, he promised not to increase the taxes either.
There is a budget coming in October. and it's going to be painful. We have no other choice, given the situation that we're in. Those with the broadest shoulders should bear the heavier burden. I'll have to turn to the country and make big asks of you as well, to accept short-term pain for long-term good, the difficult trade-off for the genuine solution.
During his recent public unraveling, Starmer also attempted to touch on economic issues. Emphasis on attempted inflation is up, the cost of living is unbearable, and businesses are struggling to stay afloat. Starmer's solution? Vague assurances and blaming this scary £22 billion black hole with no evidence of its existence whatsoever. Of course, because who needs a thriving free market when you can just play the blame game and throw more bureaucracy at the problem, right?
And the Prime Minister just keeps saying he lives in a different world, that
Could you,
the corner is turned and it's all
if people
all
are
right.
struggling with their bills, why do you want to make it harder for them by saddling them with £2,000 worth of higher taxes? How is that going to make Paula or anyone's life easier?
Starmer promised he wouldn't burden the working class, but after the elections he realised he's out of his depth. Naturally, what happened next was that he had a mental tantrum and ended up revealing the economic disasters he had in store. A lot of build-up with very little substance. He touted Labour's commitment to working families, yet failed to address how his policies would actually help them. When pressed for details, he fumbled like a novice on their first debate stage. And the look on his face, pure panic, almost like he was realising in real time how little he actually had to offer.
I was very disappointed with Keir Starmer's speech, as I think a lot of people were. We should also just note, this isn't my opinion, in the leadership ratings in all of our national polls, he's down by about 30 points since coming into power. I mean, this guy is quickly becoming one of the most unpopular prime ministers that we've had in a long time. In fact, as I'm talking to you, only a couple of hours ago, we had a new poll out this evening showing that compared to when Labour won the election at the beginning of July, Keir Starmer's ratings are down 36 points.
The approval ratings are in the gutter. In the end, Starmer's recent reveal and subsequent breakdown have done little to inspire confidence in his leadership. If anything, it's been a masterclass in political mishap. He came out, guns blazing, only to trip over his own feet and reveal just how terrified he is of the political storms brewing around him. Things are hitting an all-time low for this government, and they might not last very long in office. In fact, Nigel Farage took the opportunity to call Starmer out on his nonsense and start a campaign to remove him.
Have you ever known a new Prime Minister get off to a worse start than Keir Starmer? It's truly shocking. I mean, the message of things can only get worse is hardly inspiring, is it? And now we're living in a state, and you all know it, but they'll deny it in Westminster until the cows come home. We're living in a state with two-tier policing.
Farage is set to take Starmer down and rid us of this horrible government. What we're witnessing is a leader caught in a whirlwind of his own making, desperately trying to hold it all together. But as the public grows more frustrated with his indecision and lackluster policies, it's clear that this is not the confident, decisive leadership the country needs. So will Starmer manage to pull himself together, or are we looking at the beginning of the end for terrified Kier? Only time will tell. In the meantime, help us bring the truth to light by liking the video and subscribing to the channel.